Are DIY reuniting on the main roster? And if so, what does that mean for their future? That is what we'll be discussing in this video. Hello everybody, I am Aaron and welcome back to another video. Recently on Monday Night Raw, we had our first segment of the finally reunited way. But there was something interesting about that segment. John Gargano said, and I quote, "And like I was saying, he's coming back soon. And I think it's gonna be great." The first thing that comes to my mind for who he could be is Tommaso Ciampa. And this would make sense because Candice did not seem super excited about it. This also makes sense because if you remember the history between Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa, you know they haven't always been the bestest of friends. So it would make sense for Candice to be unsure about it. But as I said at the beginning of the video, the way has now reformed on the main roster. So what happens if Johnny reforms DIY as well? Do they become some form of supergroup? Does Tommaso take Austin Theory's spot, seeing as Austin Theory is now on SmackDown? So here's what I think. I think that Tommaso Ciampa will eventually return and will eventually be a member of The Way. But then, if you know their history, you know typically their partnership doesn't last too long. So I think that one of them will turn on the other. But what I think would be especially interesting is if Johnny turns on Tommaso this time. We have kind of seen a little bit of this where Johnny turned on Tommaso because he foresaw that Tommaso was going to turn on him. So Johnny continued to be the face in the feud. But I think if Johnny turned on Tommaso and then Johnny went to be a full-blown heel, I think that would be really interesting because it's a side of Johnny we have not really seen in WWE. For anyone who may not know, Johnny was kind of a heel during the Way era in NXT, but he was more of a comedic heel. And Johnny actually said on one of his Twitch streams that originally he was supposed to be a full-blown heel, but because of the pandemic, Johnny thought that the world had enough negativity, so he wanted to be more positive, so he went to more the comedic side of a heel. So I think it would be especially great if we saw a more full-blown heel version of Johnny like we were originally supposed to get during the Way era in NXT. I would eventually love to get back to heel Tommaso Ciampa because Tommaso Ciampa during his NXT run as a heel is probably one of the greatest heels ever. But just to switch it up a little bit, just to make it more interesting, because I feel like if they went back and had Tommaso turn on Johnny again, one, it would make Johnny kind of seem sort of, I guess, dumb for not foreseeing this again because it's already happened twice. But also it would be kind of less interesting because we've seen it before. So if Johnny turned heel this time, it'd be more unexpected and it'd be something different. It'd be something new. Like I said, we haven't really seen a full-blown heel version of Johnny on the main roster or in WWE in general. So I think seeing that version of Johnny, one, would be something new and interesting, but two, might help elevate him a little bit, maybe help make a lot of people see him more seriously, because Johnny has way more range than we have seen on Raw. Like, we have barely even scratched the surface of what he's capable of, but he just hasn't really been booked in any way to properly showcase how good he really is. And the same for Candice, same for Indy, same for Dexter, and Tommaso, of course, too. They're like all of them. They're all top tier talent. So I feel like they need change. They need something new. They need something to really get them going. And I think having DIY reunite, it'd be like the storybook moment, and then eventually have Johnny turn on Tommaso. Then we get Johnny versus Tommaso in a main roster feud. But then Johnny would also kind of be backed by The Way, which would add a different element to it. So I feel like that would be a very interesting and new, but still but there's still the history there. So it'd be something very interesting and fresh at the same time. And yeah, I just think it would be a very great way to do things. But what do you think of these ideas? Do you think DIY are reuniting? Do you think Tommaso Ciampa will join The Way? And do you see one of them turning on the other? And if so, who? But that's all for today. If you liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And until next time, goodbye.